I would like to call the meeting to order. This is the regular meeting of the Oregon City Commission. Today is Wednesday, July 15th. Good evening. I'm Alice Norris, the mayor.
Good evening, Daphne West, Commission President.
Yes, I'm that other new commissioner who's not Rocky Smith.
Doug Neely. I'm not the new commissioner.
Rocky Smith, City Commission.
Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We have a full crowd this evening for a very wonderful moment, which will happen in a minute. First, we're beginning every meeting this year, because it's Oregon's 150th birthday, with a sesquicentennial moment, a little-known, perhaps, fact about your town, Oregon City. This one is actually a rather new something. You may not know that we now have an Archbishop of Oregon City. The Pope has appointed Joseph DeNoia to be the Archbishop of Oregon City. And it's actually the titular Archbishop of Oregon City, meaning that it's a title and not an actual thing. But the CSEE of Oregon City is the second oldest in the nation, after Baltimore, I believe. And there are many Cs. Some of them do not have an archbishop. They sit unfilled as an unfilled box. Well, Oregon City happened to be one of those unfilled boxes, so when the Pope appoints this new archbishop, Oregon City will be called the titular Archbishop of Oregon City. So, a little known fact about your community. And the other interesting thing, I think, is that we found out about this when the Chamber of Commerce got a phone call from an Oregonian writer, Steve Dean's sister, who now used to write for the old Enterprise Courier in Oregon City, now writes for the Washington Times. She called from Washington, D.C. and said she wanted to present a gift basket from the city of Oregon City to the new titular Archbishop of Oregon City. So everybody scrambled to put together this gift basket, and I wrote on our behalf a nice letter of congratulations from his city and urged him, of course, to come and visit us someday. And they sent that off. So nice little touch, I thought, by the Chamber of Commerce. Okay, next, let's get on to the really important business. How many of you are here because you are the support group for an officer that we're swearing in? I think it's 100%. That is fantastic. I think the three of you can be very proud that you have a support group this big behind you. It's very important. And one of the greatest honors for me as mayor is to be able to administer the oath of office. So I'll call the chief to come forward, and the three of you, we are going to administer the oath of office for Officer Steve Brown, Officer Jonathan Neese, and Officer Brant Wadworth.
I'd like to introduce our three newest officers, Brant Wadsworth, Jonathan Neese, and Steve Brown. They started in Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday of this week, so it's actually his first day is today. Let me give a little bit of background about each of them. Brant, he went to high school here in Oregon City. He graduated from Boise State University. And prior to coming to work in the police department, he worked at RV Coons & Associate as a senior financial analyst. And he's represented today in the audience by his wife, Lynette, and his young son, Toby, which is, I think, out in the hallway. Toby needs to come in here. And also in the audience is his mother, Chris Taylor, his father, Kent Wadsworth, his stepmother, Twyla Coleman, and Steve Taylor, I'm getting the Steves mixed up, his stepfather. So glad to have aboard, Brant. Jonathan went to LaSalle High School And prior to coming to work for the police department, he worked for U.S. Smokeless Tobacco. He is a Clackamas County Reserve Officer, Reserve Deputy from 2006 to 2009. And I think his father, Jim, is in the audience today. Are you here, Jim? Okay. I mean, he's here somewhere, so. And then Steve's kind of an interesting story. He got discharged from the Marine Corps about 2 days ago? August 1st. So he gets, he's not discharged yet. I'm in trouble now. But he was active duty, actually stationed in Portland, and was able, because he got employment with the police department, they were able to use a combination of leave time and an early discharge to get him out of the Marine Corps, and he starts with us today. And you live in Beaverton, I understand, and I'm trying to remember all these names without referring to my notes, but I know your father, John, and your mother, Sharon, and your sisters, Jenna, Stephanie, and Sarah are all here too. So anyway, it's really an honor to have these young guys start for us. It's very exciting to have three guys embarking on a brand new, exciting, wonderful career with a great police department, and welcome aboard.
Great. Let's make it official. If you would raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, and state your name, do solemnly swear that I will uphold the law and support the Constitution of the United States and the state of Oregon. I will abide by the Law Enforcement Code of Ethics and the Department Rules and Regulations, while faithfully performing my duties as police officer for Oregon City, Oregon. Thank you very much. Welcome aboard. Step here just a minute. Make sure we need to have time for a photo op here. Make sure everybody's got the pictures that they want. Thank you very much.
Oh, good. It's great remembering all the names of the relatives.
I know,
It's
jeez.
impressed. So are they.
Go in your office and memorize.
About what?
About what?
Yeah. Apparently not.
Probably at a little lower level.
Especially if it's yours only.
Oh yeah, did you read about that in the newspaper? A little different kind of diet program.
Oh, no.
Take care. Be safe.
That was very cool.
Thank you. Okay, let's bring the room to order while we continue with the agenda. And next we have, I'd like to call on Damon Mabee, who is the chair of the Citizens Involvement Committee of Oregon City, and the CIC, as we commonly refer to them, was given a task of looking at our wastewater agreement and giving us comments. So I assume that's your purpose here this evening. Welcome. I think
Thank
we've
you.
seen you here before.
Once or twice. First, I'd like to make one correction. It's Citizen Involvement Council.
Council, sorry. What did I say?
And
Committee? Yeah.
also, I didn't see any of you raise your hand when you said you were part of the support group for the police officers. So.
I was going to, but the ones,
So-
yeah.
Anyway, to get on with the report, I believe you all have a copy of it on your podium, but for the audience, I'll go ahead and read it very quickly. Mayor and Commissioners, as per your request, the CIC received a briefing on the proposed wastewater partnership agreement. Following a Q&A session, the following responses were developed. 1, since this concerns matters that will impact Oregon City, whether or not we are at the table, we believe that it's better to be at the table than not. Therefore, if an agreement is going to proceed, it's best for Oregon City to sign. We, however, are concerned that despite the exit clause, once we enter into the partnership, it will be virtually impossible to leave except under the general dissolution of the partnership. We do understand that this is true for any member. We were gratified to hear that the entire cost of the Kellogg Plan study will be borne by CCSD number 1, Clackamas County Sewer District number 1, and not the ratepayers of Oregon City. We do understand that the partnership will decide which Kellogg plan to implement, and that plan may incur costs to our ratepayers. We are concerned about the lack of general citizen involvement in the entire wastewater planning process, from the Tri-City Advisory Board to the Partnership Advisory Board, including the discussions in between. We therefore request that a citizen be made a member of the Partnership Board, primary or alternate, and that the CIC be regularly briefed on the activities at the plant and of the board. Finally, there is general concern about Oregon City being so far out in front of the other partners, particularly in light of the issues currently in Milwaukee. We thank you for this opportunity to become more involved in the city and to assist you in your decision-making process. Issues such as this are exactly the venue to get citizens more informed and involved in Oregon City. So that's the official report, and I'll put on my private citizen hat, just so there's no... This is the general consensus of the CIC, and I think it accurately reflects what our concerns were.
Were all neighborhood associations present?
Yes, including one that is not yet fully formed. Berkeley Hills was represented, but they're still in the process. So there was probably 30 people at the meeting. So it was a really well-attended meeting. A lot of good questions answered. One thing I would like to say about the citizen involvement, item 4, just for the general populace, both Mayor Norris at the time and I were part of the discussions that were going on. We are elected, I was at the time, elected members from the citizens, so there was citizen involvement. It wasn't just staff doing things. But the CIC is up and running now. We've got more and more people being interested and energized and being involved with the city. Larry kind of offhand made a comment of, great, that's one less meeting I have to try to schedule around my 1,000 other meetings. So I think this is a real good opportunity to get a citizen well-educated and involved in the process that isn't necessarily an elected official. I know from my time sitting up there that juggling all the gotta-bes on top of work can be a very difficult thing. So we welcome the opportunity and the chance to really start increasing that involvement, not to the extent that we're cutting people out of the loop by any means, because it's clearly what's going on. One other comment is we did understand that this is about the partnership agreement, how the parties will talk with each other, not what's being built currently at the plant. That's already being done and that's happening. And the kind of going back to number 1 about, since it involves Oregon City, whether or not we're at the table, that was an acknowledgement that the county commissioners actually wear both hats. They are the chairmen and boards of both the county sewer district and Tri-Cities. Most people think Oregon City, West Linn, and Gladstone own and control Tri-City. We don't. And so that's why it's anything that gets us through the door and part of the discussions so that they aren't backroom, staff, political deals, whatever the case may be, is good. Flip side is, if there wasn't one board with a clear vision, some of the things that have been going on would still be in the let's talk about it stage, and potentially, CCSD in particular might be looking at millions of dollars in fines with Kellogg when there's solutions available. And I think we as good partners stepped up and said, we'll help. And so that's my private citizen, little extra knowledge part of it.
Does anyone have any questions for Damon? Commissioner Neely.
It's really point 5 that we're so out in front. Now, I think the county probably is coming to us first, but that was the county's choice in coming to us first. I think they wanted to get our agreement early on, but we haven't done that, so I'm just curious what you mean.
Well,
Or what your group means, I should
Right.
say.
That was my question, too.
If the city would have voted and passed the partnership agreement a month and a half ago when it first came to you, you would have been well out in front of every other. Looking at the agendas in the other cities, they haven't even begun to discuss it. and then you see the stuff in the news about Milwaukee and the county going to war with each other, or not agreeing to disagree, however you want to put it. You know, it would have, you know, it was a little bit of a concern. If we're moving together, you know, neck and neck, that's fine. If we're the first to sign in the next, you know, next week or whatever, somebody, but it was a little concern that we would have signed and potentially no one yet would have signed. The other side of it, though, that we did acknowledge in the meeting was if we signed it and nobody else signed it, the agreement would go away. It's not like we'd be obligating ourselves to something that, you know, no one else was there. The other thought was, we sign it, the county signs it, we get to make all the decisions. And that kind of didn't go there. But we hoped, you know.
1.5 votes?
That's right. 1 point, it'd be 7 votes because we'd be the only ones at the table.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, Commissioner Neely.
since you're a representative here, could you tell us the process about having a citizen in the advisory board?
Oh, actually, that's probably a Larry question. The partnership outlines, oh, you're talking about it's the Tri-City Advisory Board.
No, any advisory board dealing with wastewater,
Yeah,
the partnership has...
The partnership board is clearly outlined to be representative of the particular entities. So if the, and I think the partnership board could talk about whether they wanted to have a citizen advisory board, but it's clearly delineated.
We actually
process.
have one representative. You could have an alternate, and that really would be...
We have 1.3, don't we?
That's
Yeah,
votes,
1.5.
not
Oh,
representatives.
people. Sorry, yes, that's different.
I tried to get someone to volunteer to be cut
Be the
in half, but
0.3.
they would not.
But we don't have that since we haven't signed the agreement yet.
No, I've been sitting in, you can appoint whoever, and if you want to appoint someone other than me, I would be more than happy.
But on that committee, I think that either needs to be our city manager or an elected official.
They need some background.
It needs to have background, and it needs to have someone with decision-making authority and ability, I think, because those are going to be some really tough negotiations, as they have been all along. So, right?
Let me ask the question.
Sure.
There are alternates to each of these positions, are there?
Well, I think they really haven't discussed that part. Again, they're still
Yeah.
trying to get organized. We can't get organized because no one can agree to meet. That's one of the issues with not getting on with this agreement. But I think you probably are going to need some type of alternate because you definitely do not want to miss a meeting.
Anyone to miss.
I think, well, I think the CIC probably does have a knowledgeable person on it, and there might be the possibility then of having such a person as an alternate.
The only thing, I think that should be discussed. There may be a better way to do a citizen advisory board than the partnership board, because it's such a delicate balance of to create to make those decisions that impact all of us in the future. But so I think that would be a good discussion for the partnership board to have, as to how to involve more citizens.
Yeah, maybe
I mean, we don't have citizens involved at the Tri-City Advisory Committee level except for Budget Committee, and when we did the master plan, we had some citizen reps there too. So I think that's an issue to continue to talk about.
The issues, too, that Oregon City wants to discuss, and that's why the sooner this process gets undertaken, probably the better off that we are, and maybe that's not even the right forum to have those discussions, but I think they're going to be a piece of that, is from all cities, the question of urbanization and how that takes place, particularly since we're talking about an urban service here. Secondly, the issues of mitigation, which we've talked about considerably, because those definitely have been set aside as this other movement took place, and I think Oregon City has a lot to talk about in that regard. So whoever you appoint, they need to be
very
familiar with
plugged
those
in.
issues, and you're going to want to probably weigh in on that discussion. Again, I think one of the things that gets forgotten in this, and I think Mr. Maybe mentioned that, is the fact that you are elected officials. that is probably the ultimate form of citizen involvement. And not only is it citizen involvement stepping forward in the highest regard, but probably regretfully, you actually have some constitutional limitation that you have to deal with, or at least authorities that you have to deal with. So, you do have to weigh in on those issues.
I'd like the idea of continuing to use the CIC as a sounding board. So that, to me, is a good expansion of representation that we can use to bring issues forward for a full discussion. So at minimum, I certainly want to continue to pursue that. Commissioner Nocita.
First, thanks to Chair Mabee and the CIC for considering this matter. I really appreciate this advice, and we'll take it into account as we move forward on this. I did want to get an update from the city manager about the email we received talking about a meeting of all of the potential parties to this and when that might take place.
One of the discussions at the last partnership meeting, and one of the things that continues, I think, to confuse the issue is that so far this issue has been discussed in each city, and each city has a different viewpoint of it. And a lot of the interpretation of what's going on in the next city has been done through whatever the press reports have been, and not that those have been inaccurate, but they're probably not as detailed about what all this thing is about. What we had suggested is it might be good to have a town hall of the various elected boards so we could get in that room, hear what those concerns are, so folks could kind of understand what this process is about. And then if we have those differences, we could air those things. One of the things in Milwaukee here is they're concerned about the plant, and they've not wanted to become part of this process. Again, this process is setting up a table for discussion. The plant is one of those issues, or Kellogg is one of those issues that need to be resolved in this whole thing. But if we can't agree to how we're going to sit down and have the conversation, other parties are going to make that decision, and we're not going to be part of it. That's why this process needs to move along. Trying to find a date that everyone is available is difficult, but right now they're looking at August the 20th. I'll have more details when they do that. Basically, I think what they're going to do is we'll try to get as many folks there as we can. I think understanding that as broad as that base is, you're not going to get everyone. Again, that's tentative at this point, so as soon as that gets firmed up, we'll let you know.
It was my understanding that it wasn't really a town hall format, that it was really wastewater 101.
Yes, it one.
That it was
Well-
really bringing everybody up to speed on all of the issues and all of the concerns and previous agreements, et cetera, language, definitions.
Yeah, but I would imagine the discussion will end up being broader than
I
that.
assume, I assume, but I understood from your email, though, that there was a lot of misunderstanding about how we got here and where we are.
Well, I
actually,
think
in
so,
the
and I think you
process.
see some of this, with all respect to the CIC, is, I think there's some things, and again, they didn't have much time to deal with it, but when we talk about the lack of citizen involvement, I think if we go back to when we started with Clearwater, what followed Clearwater, what led to decisions after that, to the partnership, we've had a lot of citizen involvement, and a lot of that has cost us hundreds of thousands of dollars to go back over and get very near back to a point that we started at. That, not that it's bad, but I think we really have to look at the facts of the matter and recognize what those are, and I think some of those things have gotten awfully confused in this process.
And I know Commissioner Nocita had asked that perhaps it might be appropriate to have the three cities get together, and I think if that's necessary, that it would be good to do it after the general meeting, so that we can kind of get a sense of that. So that.
And as we did have a joint meeting with
Right.
the three cities as we
Mhm.
went through this process that was held in
The
West
three city
Lynn.
councils.
Again, this issue has continued to evolve through a lot of discussions.
When did that meeting take place?
When I was sitting up there.
Yeah, it's
It was last fall or end of summer or something like
That
that.
was so
Yeah.
long ago.
It was so last year.
Okay, thank you very much.
If I may,
yes,
while
you
I
may.
have the bully pulpit,
Okay.
since citizen comments next, Barkley Hills Neighborhood Association meeting is July 21st, Tuesday, at 7 p.m. at the Christ Church Apostolic, 600 Barkley Hills Drive. So that'll be the election of officers and adoption of bylaws, and then they will have their official seat at the city. So that's the 21st of July, Tuesday, 7 p.m. at the church on Barclay Hills Drive.
Thank you very much. Thank you for serving, too, on the CIC. Okay, moving into citizen comment, which I guess we just started. Damon started.
It sure took a lot more than 3 minutes.
Yeah, where's that little button?
It's on the bridge. Yeah, notice there's a stop.
All right, we'll move into citizen comment, which is an opportunity for citizens to talk to us about issues that are not on the agenda. And I have two people who've signed up to do that. So if you'd like to come up together, Paul Edgar and Karen Morey. Please fill out a form outside if you have come and wish to speak. Paul, in the interest of time, you want to just give that. Paul, in the interest of time, why don't you just give that there and we'll pass those around? Paul? Excuse me? Just give those to Mr. Yeah. Thank you.
My name is Paul Edgar. I'm a citizen of Oregon City. I circled a couple things. This first page of the bare facts is from the Citizens Utility Board of Oregon. It's part of a mailer that I just recently received. And it talks about, and I circled the first thing, currently Oregon is in the worst recession in more than 2 generations, with unemployment climbing over 12%, and long-term institutions like Joe's Sporting Goods, formerly G.I. Joe's, closing, showing an incredible amount of indifference to the suffering of Oregon families. Utilities are asking customers to pay millions in increased profits, be it profits or whatever it is. It's taking money out of people's pockets in the most adverse time. I'd like to slip down to this other circled area. Here at Cubs, we're used to utilities seeking higher rates, but we're disturbed by the recent activity. There is a real disconnect between the reality in people's lives and in the world that utilities seem to live in. In reading the utilities' findings seeking millions in profits, we are surprised by the sense of entitlement that utilities seem to feel towards our pocketbooks. Why is this important? Because the next page is a statement, and I've done a great deal of research trying to understand this wastewater agreement. And one of the important parts of the wastewater agreement is that it will increase our rates. It will increase the rates of everyone in the Tri-Cities area. If you just simply look at the fact that if we were to decommission Milwaukee, the sewer lines now are gravity feed going down into Milwaukee, collecting at the sewer plant. We have to reverse that, put pump stations up, all the way up through a sensitive ecological area below Clackamas Town Center, and then the existing pipe between Oregon City and that where it would collect up at that point has to be completely ripped out and replaced. We get into the big pipe world. And then we get into the decommissioning. When we become a partner, and I would like for you to read this document in detail. If we become a partner, it is a marriage without divorce. Once you accept that liability and the liabilities are put onto your back, you are liable, no matter what happens. And so what it means is...
Summarize, Paul.
What it means is that we are in a position where we should not be approving this partnership agreement without having all of the facts on the table. If you approve a partnership agreement and the rates go up 3 or 4 times, right now, if you get into the agreement, you can see we're paying $12 per EDU, or equivalent dwelling unit, and CCSD is paying $34.85. But if we add on top of that all of this rate and money...
Paul, your time is up. Can you summarize, please?
Who pays the $1 billion?
Okay. Thank you. I would like to respond to that, because part of the negotiation that we did to date is that we have protected, it was very, very important, the table I sat at, and the table that the city manager sat at, to protect the rates for the citizens of Oregon City. The rates for our communities will not raise any faster than growth. When we get to parity, after that work is done, then when we need to begin to expand for growth, rates may raise, but hopefully it will be just at the amount of growth. That's what we've been working on.
Madam Mayor, if I could, too,
Yes.
because this is a confusion that continues to exist. That arrangement is already in other agreements that have
Yes.
taken place, and when the construction at Tri-City began, is that train left the station. And those are agreements, again, as you mentioned, that where we have the rate differential, that's why there is separation in this new arrangement between the two districts, that Tri-City will pay a lower rate than CCSD, who has to pick up those costs as this expansion takes place, and as we move into the future, and then we reach that rate equity, as you mentioned, that's when things begin to change. This agreement has to do how we're going to have discussions. If we do not enter into an agreement and get to that point, those decisions will be made without us. That's what this agreement's about, and that's what keeps getting lost in all this. And the term partnership is a misnomer, because if you read through that, we are an advisory committee. We have a vote among the partnership in terms of the recommendation, but the actual decision-making process and the only real power rests with the county commission.
Thank you. Karen?
Okay, now for the lighter side. On behalf of the Chamber of Commerce and 25 of your local businesses, I want to remind everyone about the Oregon City is Charming program. I finished my bracelet today, except for one charm that ran out,
That's such a great program.
and it is absolutely wonderful. For $5 at the end of the Oregon Trail Interpretive Center, handmade for you on Main Street, or the Chamber of Commerce at 12th and Washington, you can obtain the bracelet. You also get a diagram of the 25 businesses on Washington, Main Street, 7th Street, and Hilltop, where you can purchase the individual charms. And you get darling little things, including itty-bitty little pies from Munoz. And I just went to John L. Scott today. You get a house with a little heart-shaped key that goes to the door. So this is to promote business in Oregon City, and it also ends you up with a beautiful bracelet. And I wanted to make just a separate note. Chris didn't come back in. But take note of the fact that when you swore Brant Wadsworth in just now, he's the 4th-generation employee of the city of Oregon City.
Thank you for letting us know that. Yes. I also
Says
want-
something about the city.
May I also add on to that?
You mean nepotism?
No, but loyalty of employees and families is something Oregon City is known for. I'd just like to circle back to the bracelet. I just think it's always good to give recognition where it is due, and this was a brainchild of Sherry O'Brien, who owns Handcrafted for You, and I just think it's a wonderful idea. I've heard all over the region, I've got to come to Oregon City and pick out some of those charms. So it's doing the job I think she intended for it to do.
And Sherry has a lovely little dollhouse charm, but she also has an optional cat charm. When I paid her the $1 and said I'd take the cat the other day, she would not allow me to take the store cat.
Is there anyone else who's come for citizen comment? Thank you. That concludes that section of our agenda. Let's look at the agenda this evening. Is there anyone that needs anything removed from the consent agenda, either of those items or any reordering? We do have a deletion under general business, and that is item 6C, is going to be held over to another meeting.
Which one?
I believe it's 6C, at least that was in my email.
C?
Yes, C. The second reading of the Jones Construction Ordinance. Yes, Commissioner Nocita?
If it is the interest of the commission, Madam Mayor, I would like to add to the agenda the matter of the code compliance issue in Kanema regarding Mr. Sweet and Ms. Renner and our alley, because the city attorney had indicated that was not something that we could do in executive session and that we needed to do an open session, and I would like to do that.
Are there those that wish to add that to the agenda? It's a walk-on. Commissioner Neely?
I mean, I guess we can deal with it, the majority of the commission wishes to. However, I mean, we got mechanisms to deal with code compliance, and I'm not sure what the reason is that we wanted to hear this at the commission level at this juncture. There
Right.
might be a different juncture at which this occurs. If something doesn't get resolved or gets resolved in the courts, we might do something, but I'm very uncomfortable about it because it's been pointed out to us the number of code compliance issues that we have come to the city in this year. I think, what was that number?
492 is what.
492, and if we entertain individual code compliances at the city commission meeting, where it's unclear to me how we as commissioners are going to deal with them. There are issues that the code compliance ought to be dealing with. I just feel very uncomfortable about it, frankly.
I'd like to agree with Commissioner Neely in that our process is evolving in the issues that and I'd like to see the process go to its natural conclusion, and if there's a irregularity or something along the way, then, perhaps that's apt.
I will have a question for city attorney at the end of the meeting, however, to something that's relevant to the general question, but it
Not
may
now.
not come up now.
Okay. Commissioner Nocita?
I just wanted to make the point that, as I've expressed in emails, I'm concerned not uniquely about this particular issue in Kenemo, but about the whole process of code compliance and code enforcement. And I particularly, I don't think that that's necessarily something that we should delay a discussion on. If the commission doesn't want to do it tonight, I'm happy to do it at a work session. But
That's a
But
better idea.
as long as it's a general
Yeah.
General.
concern and not bringing up specific incidences that are...
well, I
before
don't
the
think
city.
you can talk about the general without raising
Well, I-
specific examples. But if I'm comfortable in waiting to a work session, if the commission prefers to proceed that way.
I would,
As long as it's policy
you know,
setting.
as long as policy say.
Yes, policy
I just don't, if that happens, then I would like to invite an attorney to be at that particular study session.
I would agree, because one of the things I mentioned in the email I sent out to the commission was a specific section of our code that appears to grant authority to the commission itself on these matters, and I want to get clarification on that.
What- Commissioner West?
I'm sure Commissioner Nocita that our city attorney will look over this before, and if we need an attorney at it, he will advise us if we need it or not.
I believe one of our goals is to look at code compliance. I mean, it's an issue that we've been wanting to take up. I'd kind of like to do it in a timely manner, when staff is really ready to have the research done and have the people there, because we've got a pretty heavy schedule for this month, working on parking particularly and all the other projects to finish. So I don't see it of urgency. Is it all right if staff schedules that when they can?
It's fine with
Because,
me.
is that okay with everybody? Hearing no objection?
Well, I do have an objection. I don't want to make it so amorphous that, we don't get to this until,
But it's on our
December.
goals. It's in the list of goals. So we have, talking about a different way of doing code compliance is on there. So, Larry, you want to get back to us on what you think is possible?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. All right, then we'll take the agenda in the order in which it sits. And first, under general business, we have the second reading of Ordinance 9-1002, amending our municipal code by adding a new chapter relating to business recycling requirements. We've talked about this at a work session twice, I think, and tonight it's up for the second reading. Is there new information to come before us?
No, Madam Mayor, there's not.
Okay, thank you. Then may I have a motion for adoption of the second reading? Commissioner West.
I'd like to move for the second reading, approval for ordinance number 09-1002 of the City Commission of the City of Oregon City, amending the Oregon City Municipal Code by adding a new chapter relating to business recycling requirements.
Thank you. And a second, please.
I'll second that.
Moved by Commissioner West, seconded by Commissioner Nocita. For the second reading, Mr. Sullivan.
This is ordinance number 09-1002, an ordinance of the City Commission of the City of Oregon City amending the Oregon City Municipal Code by adding a new chapter relating to business recycling requirements.
Thank you. Is there any citizen comments? Seeing none, Nancy, the vote, please.
Commissioner Neely,
Aye.
Commissioner West,
Aye.
Commissioner Smith,
Aye.
Commissioner Nocita,
Aye.
Mayor Norris.
Aye, motion passes 5-0. Next item, Business Resolution 9-19, exempting Oregon City from competitive bidding for a public improvement contract for the South End Road pavement construction project. This was a project that had some information that was missing last week, so Nancy Kratchar, our staff.
Good evening. Thank you, Madam Mayor, and good evening, Commissioners. First, I would like to provide a little explanation about what happened in your last meeting's packet. It was very unfortunate. I don't know if you all know that we have a new electronic process for our commission report preparation. And as requested, John Lewis and under my instruction provided a revised report and with a much more detailed analysis, very much what you see in your packet tonight. And when he sent it, pushed that button to the city recorder, it went someplace besides save. And then
Lolala's looking at this probably.
yeah. And then we both, I was already on vacation, and John was leaving for vacation that very day. And we feel it was very unfortunate that that kind of occurrence happened. And you know, we're working the bugs out of our new system, and just wanted you to know there was no intention of providing you a report that didn't include the information you had requested. So we sincerely wanted to let you know about that little snafu. And with that, then, moving on, what we are asking you to do tonight is to adopt a resolution that exempts the South End Road paving project with Icon Construction from the policies and rules set forth for procurement of construction services by the State of Oregon and the Attorney General's Office. For this particular kind of a project and the history of it, this exemption requires that you, as the public contracting body, make findings that it is unlikely that the exemption will diminish competition, that it is unlikely that will encourage favoritism in awarding of the public improvement contract, and then also we're to find that the exempted contract likely will result in substantial savings for the city. We are presenting you with information to find that the competition is not diminished because Icon got 3 quotes, competitive quotes from 3 contractors that are capable of doing the work, and they're qualified contractors. And the paving work would be done by the contractor that submitted the lowest bid for the work. What's unusual about this is that we didn't do the public advertising. It's working with a developer that's already out in the field, so that's what makes it different from the standard public improvement contracting rules. The resolution goes on to note that favoritism is not encouraged because it really is by coincidence that the Cornerstone development at South End Road and Lawton and its contractor were conditioned to improve South End Road, half street, and plus 10 feet along their frontage. Around the same time, additional sections of South End Road arose in the city's pavement management program for improvement. There is no pre-existing relationship between the city or its public officials and the contractor. Then finally, cost savings is realized both in hard and soft costs, and this is where we hopefully will provide you the detail information that you need to make your decision. The hard costs have been estimated for you, and they're easy to estimate, realizing that you're avoiding significant duplication inherent when you have 2 projects. For example, we found that you would spend about $10,000 to $15,000 on individual bid solicitation, including consulting, printing, advertising costs, etc. There are other costs that can be saved by not duplicating projects in mobilization of the contractor and all of the equipment, administration of two projects, both by the contractor and by the city and inspectors. 2 asphalt batches would be required. You're probably not going to happen to be at the same plant on the same day, and that will require individual different laboratory analysis for quality control testing, and the obvious use of multiple sets of excavation and paving equipment. The thought of working in the intersection twice with their work and then a little bit more of their work and then our work, and moving there's some flashing light equipment that's up there, and the county would need to come in and move that twice. We do temporary striping twice, and those items equate to about, we estimate, of $12,000 to $16,000 in cost savings. Now, further, there are things that your staff, John Lewis, brings to this, to our business here, from years of construction experience and project management and coordination, to know good value when it may be realized from things that you cannot necessarily put 2 hours at $16 an hour or 3 tons at $45 a ton. Those are things like Icon has familiarity with the project location. There's no messing around with where are my boundaries, et cetera. The other thing is there's experience with avoiding cumbersome and inefficient logistics of 2 contractors working on side-by-side projects, whether they're at the same time or not, coming in before one another, et cetera. There's also knowledge of how much the paving stages can be streamlined with this kind of a proposal. There will be a higher rate of consistency on paving joints, surface finish, just due to the heat of the asphalt, the consistency of compaction, the rolling techniques, all of those things combined create a much higher quality product than having 2 separate operations side by side. And then that speaks to the overall quality control that's gained by completing majority of the paving as one large project, and rather than several sections that it's difficult to cleanly tie them together. And again, these are not costs that we can say that we can't apply unit costs to them, but based on experience, you know that there is, whether it be immediate cost savings for the contractor or the fact that you have a better quality product, and the longer term value in terms of maintenance is something it's very difficult to quantify. There's a qualitative value. The other thing that Oregon City Public Works values are items that, again, are not easy to directly quantify, but have economic value to the public's checkbook, or with another kind of a value with the relationship between the public and the city, and that would be sort of public perception bank, per se, so to speak. So we propose that the City Commission understand and acknowledge this value, which lies in the convenience or inconvenience to the traveling public of one project versus 2, the disruption that it can cause to the traveling public, and detour routes, et cetera. It's not just along South End Road. There's also significant value in the safety for pedestrians and bicycles during roadway construction if you are incurring one project instead of 2. There's commuter time that has value. We place value on that. There's also the notion of ease of access to local businesses, such as the South End Market. And then the perception of grinding and setting up a construction zone twice within the same area, perhaps within days, months, whatever, that really costs you in terms of public perception on how the heck are they managing that project. So I'm trusting that these details and specificity will allow the Commission to make findings presented in Resolution 09-19. And I'm happy to answer any questions the Commission may have.
Questions from commissioners? Commissioner Neely.
It's actually directed to our city attorney. I presume that when we go to competitive bidding, there are certain requirements that we meet. And would ICON be required to meet those same specific
No,
requirements?
as a private group, they don't have to meet them. I think what Ms. Krashauer said, that they tried to replicate those in terms of the three quotes that they made. And I think the argument is that this meets the first prong of the two requirements, that this doesn't encourage favoritism in bidding.
Okay. Commissioner Smith.
I see no reason to object to this. I will state, though, even though I don't believe that it's an indirect conflict, a good portion of my family lives within a very close vicinity of this project.
Not a conflict. Commissioner West.
Well, I support this project as well for financial reasons or savings for the city, and then also, as Nancy was saying, for the public perception and the public relations. Nobody likes to see a street worked on and then go in right after and see it torn up again. But I just had a thought while we were talking about this, and this had a street has a PCI of 60, and I was thinking, there's many worse streets in Oregon City, but I bet you're doing this street because you don't want it to get to that worse.
That's correct.
So the logic, I'm sure, of some people watching or wondering why we're paving streets that aren't totally dilapidated is we're doing them at a point where it isn't going to cost nearly as much. It's just, I don't know the process you're going to do on it.
That's correct. It's basically a grind and overlay instead of a complete reconstruct, and
Right.
it's a tremendous difference in cost.
So do you have the ones that are completely in disrepair also on that? I can't remember how that all weighed out. I'm looking at
Yes, we had
Mr. Lewis.
we had our map showing the streets we do in the first 3 years, so we're working on that.
But it's a balance of some really bad ones that need to be fixed and preventative.
And I assume that arterials, when they're getting that stage, come at a higher priority.
Yes, they do. In fact, we are doing some paving, we'll be doing some paving. John Lewis is working on a regular contract to do our summer paving program, and parts of Molalla are on that.
I'd like to move Resolution 919 exempting Oregon City from the Oregon Revised Statute 279C.300 and Oregon City Municipal Code 2.40 as related to competitive bidding, a public improvement contract for the South End Road Pavement Reconstruction Project.
I'll second. I did have some discussion, though.
Moved by Commissioner Neely, seconded by Commissioner Nocita. Now for discussion. Go ahead.
Just a quick question. First, Ms. Krashauer, thank you for your explanation on what happened. And I do want to acknowledge also that both the mayor and the city manager pointed out regarding my concerns that it was possible for me to have raised the matter when the city manager sent out his list of items. And I don't want to discourage that because I'm appreciative of the city manager sending out that list of items from the previous days' Urban Renewal Commission and City Commission meetings. I think that's a good thing. I did want to ask a question regarding on page 1, there's a paragraph, after receiving the bid from information from the contractor, city staff negotiated a reduced scope of work with ICON as the general contractor, resulting in a contract value of $117,897. Is that reduced to $117 from the bid of Kodiak of $160?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, and why? Maybe I missed it in a discussion. Why was that reduced?
When we first asked for the bids, or when we first created the scope of work for this paving project, we asked for a really, probably a super duper paving project, including thermoplastic striping, and when we got the quotes, we were a little bit alarmed that we didn't have enough budgeted to do this kind of project in addition to the other ones we were going to do. So John very carefully went and thought, now let's see, how can I get the pavement done that needs to be done and save some money? So he worked on the striping rather than doing thermoplastic striping. We're just having the county stripe it with paint, which is fine. And the pavement section towards the center of South End Road is a little bit less than would have been perfect, but it's okay, and we're into a budget where we feels appropriate.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Seeing none, Nancy, please poll the commission.
Commissioner Neely?
Aye.
Commissioner West?
Aye.
Commissioner Smith?
Aye.
Commissioner Nocita?
Aye.
And Mayor Norris?
Aye, motion passes 5-0. Thank you for that information. Next is an item that I actually would like to discuss. The Willamette Falls Heritage Area Coalition and request for part-time staff funding. You have two items to replace marked 6D. One of them is from me, and that is it's a draft, because our meeting is tomorrow morning, and we have not discussed the scope of work with the committee yet for a part-time staff person. But the Willamette Falls Heritage Area Coalition, as you recall, is the group that's, I think we're in our third year, meeting to determine whether the area between the Tualatin River and the Clackamas River and the pieces, significant historical and cultural and recreational pieces in between, should be a national heritage area, which doesn't impose rules or regulations on it, but it does create cachet. It will do things such as signage, some preservation projects, gateway improvements, all kinds of improvements that can happen with a little bit of federal money that comes along with this designation. We've met with Senator Schrader's office twice. We're hoping that he'll be the champion for this project, being our federal representative. And what has happened in this very, it's a partnership that includes every stakeholder that you can imagine on the river, from industrial users to recreational to the native, the tribes. That we have many projects sort of circling, from grant proposals to congressional work to individual projects and that are happening. So what has happened is that for a volunteer group, we feel like there needs to be somebody to pull the strings together and move the work ahead. It's about ready to kick the ball down the hill. And so what we came up with was, since we are a volunteer group with no funding, and actually we're not an organized 501c3, which probably will happen down the future, which will be one of the projects for this staff person, is that we thought that the proposal that came out of the meeting last month was that a part-time person could probably contract for $30,000, and that we would like to do it for 3 years. So it was determined that the City of West Lynn would talk to their people about a $10,000 contribution over 3 years. We would do the same here, and then the other $10,000 would be cobbled together. So the Arts Commission, the tribes, various grant proposals. We have a possibility of SHPO, State Historic Preservation, and even some pots of money from the National Park Service. So that's sort of how we're going at it. So I wanted to tell you what the discussion was from the City of West Lynn, because they've already discussed it. They were very supportive of the concept. You talked a little bit about where the money should come from, and didn't feel comfortable in making a 3-year commitment. But they, if I understand it correctly, they've committed to $10,000 for the first year, and they'd like to revisit it at the end to see, where it's going, what it's doing, and has the money been found someplace else or whatever. So it's essentially, they know that it's 3 years. I believe that they instructed the city manager to kind of identify the pots of money, but they've committed to the first year only. If I could just regress and remind you that you supported a up to $5,000 sort of operating expense out of the business license fund to use for mostly the University of Oregon Landscape Architecture Studios, which has given the landscape architecture students and architecture students the opportunity to drill down on designs and ideas for this area at a pretty professional level, but with adult, not adult supervision, but with professionals in the field as, of course, their instructors. That's what I meant to say. And we've been pretty impressed with that. There will begin to be, as far as the future goes, a public rollout, because an entity cannot be accepted as a National Heritage Area without public buy-in. And we haven't done that to date because it's still so conceptual, but now that we have the visuals from the students, we have more concepts of what could be included. I think with a staff helping us to put all that together, I think we'll be ready to roll it out and see what you, the public, think about this concept. So the $5,000, we've used $1,000 of it. And I don't know whether there will be additional demands. We've finished the studios. There may be some printing costs, but we're very good so far at getting in-kind contributions from state parks. Particularly, we have a loaned executive there. The county has been absolutely amazing through the Tourism and Cultural Affairs Department. They've given us staff. They've written grants and proposals and letters. Anyway, with that, I would like, if you'd like to make a tentative statement this evening, but I am asking you to consider, if you want to do it exactly like West Lynn, I guess I would put that on the table then, because we've tried to kind of keep lockstep with what they do. $10,000, but actually, maybe while you're thinking about that, Larry, would you like to talk about where it might come from piece?
Yes, I put together a spreadsheet here looking at your business development, business license fund, and again, doing so, I had to make some assumptions on some things, so let me kind of run through that real quick. First thing under license and permits, that's actually the portion of the business license that comes into that fund, and we had talked about kind of upping our efforts to try to get more revenue coming in. So historically, we've been getting in there about $35,000. Actually, been a little under that. So we're assuming we can get $45,000. That balances with a transfer to code enforcement, because that's one of the agents we would use to make sure we're getting collections on business license, and that's going to take some staffing, and that's why you see that continuing to go up there. In addition to that, one of the programs also you've asked us to figure out how to fund was a flower basket program, and I've looked at all flower basket programs across the city, and you may or may not want to fund it this way, but I wanted to see if that would fit in there, and those are running, looks like about $35,000. That's all groups. That's not just the city. That's flower basket, so you don't have to deal with that at OCCIT.
And street planters.
And what?
And the street planters.
Okay.
Those would be the ones by the elevator, by the elevator in
Well,
front.
the black ones along 7th Street, I'm sure those are
Whatever's
the-
all involved in that program, because I got the information out of Public Works, and that's about, and that goes all the way up Malala, 7th Street, downtown, so that's what those aspects are. In doing that, if you put the $10,000 in with a 3-year commitment, you can make that work. There's a couple of caveats here. You might want to consider the Main Street program. I also made the assumption that $50,000 would actually be requested next year as well. If you go beyond that, you're going to have to make some decisions between that and the flower basket program. But you can see that with where we're starting today, which is roughly $215,000 in the beginning fund balance, and if we have the 35 or 45, and if we only have the 35, we don't do the transfer to code because we're not going to be doing that aspect of it, then you should be able to get through the next 5 years with roughly about a $90,000 fund balance, which means you're going to have to be a little bit more conservative in some of the things that you may take on during that in terms of this fund, because we've kind of hit it hard here these last couple of years, but there's a way to get that funded. The only other place to look and consider funding this would be out of out of transit room tax, but in doing that, that would only reduce your OCCIT grants. So.
Yeah. Can't win.
And then the third option, of course, you could go to general fund contingency, but I think you've got an issue there with no new programs.
Commissioner West.
So for 2009, 2010, we show $10,000 out of it. So is the 5 that we've already given out of the, committed to it, out of that 10, or is that in addition to that 10?
We've already spent 1,000. I don't know if we'll get billing on the other 4. That's not in here because I've assumed that's been spent. And so this is just looking at this year going forward, and that would have been in last year. And that results in your 215 beginning fund balance because that's part of that drawdown on what you've had.
Oh, excuse me. I was lost, so I don't know who raised their hand first, but
We'll
Commissioner
defer to Commissioner
Commissioner
Neely.
Neely. Okay.
We've identified the source before, and we've been talking about trying within this fiscal year, if we can, to actually get an economic development coordinator. And I believe when you discuss possibilities, it also included this particular funding source. The economic development coordinator, of course, is in our city goals, and I guess before we pass on this, I think we have to have a little broader discussion of what our priorities are in terms of the use of the business license fund. And I'd like to have that discussion. I don't know if you can build it into the next work session or not, since we're, we've got a limited funding source here, and we've talked about it using it for various things that we think are important.
Commissioner Nocita.
I'm glad I deferred to Commissioner Neely because he basically eloquently stated what my concerns are. We did discuss using the business license fund for the economic development coordinator. I think the stakes during a recession and what's the most beneficial way to use the business license fund in conjunction with other line items in the budget. I just think the stakes are very high in terms of the potential payback of having an economic development coordinator are so much higher than flower baskets, or even this proposal to use on the Willamette Heritage area. I'm not sure that they're mutually exclusive, but Commissioner Neely voices my sentiments precisely in that we need to discuss this proposal in that larger context of exactly what our priorities for the business license fund are. And I would concur in very specifically having this discussion at our next work session, because another thing I was going to raise this evening was I'd also like to have a broader discussion on how to raise the revenue in the business license fund. I actually had the pleasure today of doing a ride-along with the building department and actually discuss this matter of how to feasibly and with economic efficiency using various departments to scout out folks that don't have a business license. So I think I don't know if 45,000 is conservative and that we could
It is
do it.
conservative. yeah.
Okay. But if we had a discussion not only of what we were going to spend the business license fund on, but a broader discussion on how to, because I think there was that report done a couple years ago on that exact point. I think that's the larger discussion, both on how to raise more funds and what our priorities for using the funds are. And so I would concur exactly with Commissioner Neely on that point.
Commissioner Smith.
In addition to that, the business license discussion, I think a lot of my information about the scope of work for the coalition has been given in this kind of summary, but I think it changes daily too. And
This is the only thing it's ever been.
well, what I mean is, it's a process, and I don't necessarily know that I'm fully understanding what the coalition's working towards yet, and I think going to the meeting tomorrow morning will help with that. So I think it's hard for me to make a decision when I don't really know the full viewpoint of scope of work that the commission is, or this coalition is working towards. I do think that the striving towards making that area heritage site or heritage area for Willamette Falls is a great opportunity for the city. I'm really excited about it. But one of the other things that I think may come into some play is that we still haven't got the report back from our consultant for the CHP, and if the CHP is a partner in this, I think we need to know kind of what the outcome is of that consultant's report to see what, because that consultant was hired to really not only look at CHP, but to ask some of the questions about what is the ability to this group, coalition, and the Willamette Falls site in general. And so I think until we have some idea what the consultant says about, and we know what our real direct partnership is with the CHP itself, it's kind of hard for us to know where to move forward on this project. But I think that, generally speaking, I think it's really exciting, and I definitely think that I want to support it, but I think I'm not. There's
Right
some
there.
questions that need to be answered before we can write the check, I think.
Okay, and to me, this seems like the most logical fund. I'm not sure I'm interested in looking at the other possibilities. I think they're well tapped as well. So, yes.
I understand the discussion. We can have that at your next work session. Do you want to consider a 1 year, as West Lynn is doing, to kind of kick this thing off, and then you can look at the longer-term commitment once you discuss those priorities if you want, if you wish to, be another way of doing it. So.
Anybody interested in a kind of a tentative 1 year while we have the discussion? We can certainly present it that way as tentative as well. I mean, I need to somehow express our interest. I mean, I can certainly characterize it as that we need to look at our priorities for this particular funding source.
I think you've got an indication that this commission feels that this is probably an important undertaking, but I think you
Right,
need
not-
to indicate to them that we have these other things and that we really can't make that guarantee at this point.
Yeah.
Even on a one-year
agree.
basis, if we're talking about trying to get a economic development coordinator this year, which I would like to do so.
Out of this funding source. Okay, we will report that tomorrow. I've asked Commissioner Smith to attend since Commissioner West actually wasn't going to be able to come. So,
I have
Commissioner West.
one comment. Since this came up, I don't know, it was in January, that we didn't have enough information to make this decision. I guess I'm asking of my fellow commissioners, what information do we need before we make this decision from the Willamette Falls Heritage Area? So
I think
if
it's
this wasn't enough tonight,
I don't think the issue is to whether this was enough for the funding of a project. The issue is we've got
priorities.
other priorities that we've already listed, and it's a limited funding source. I mean, if there is a proposal for additional funding source that we could look at it, I think the mayor correctly says that there probably isn't, but the city manager oftentimes is creative in that regard.
Commissioner Smith.
To answer that as well, like I said, I think I'm supportive of the project. My only one concern with the project has always partly been the tram, and I don't know if
The
that's
tram's
still
not-
part of it. So I don't. I mean, that's what I said. I don't understand where we're at, and if that's a piece of it. So I think clarification of where the process is actually at, and what because I think that's morphed a little bit. So that's the answer to your question in terms of what
Thank you.
information I don't.
How it fits
Thank
together.
you.
Yeah.
Okay. Great, good discussion. Thank you very much. We'll revisit. Next item on the agenda is the report on the Oregon Way Grant, which is a continuation of a discussion that we had at our work session.
Madam Mayor, members of the
Patterson.
commission, you had asked me to look into this issue and bring you back some information, see if this is something that you wish to jump into. I have put a report at your place, and I borrowed heavily from their website, which everyone seems to keep directing me to every time I talk with someone. So it's, the answers, I think, are there, but it did take a while to navigate through all of that. A couple of things you need to know about the Oregon Way project. First of all, Oregon Way does not have any funds to administer. What it is a program which they will look at projects and screen those and forward those to the governor for his endorsement, and that endorsement then goes for grant applications for any additional federal funds through the American Recovery and Revitalization Act. I have, in that report, you will see the guidelines that the governor establishes. I think the project that Ms. Holden is talking about stacks up fairly well with those. There's a couple of smaller things in there where they may be problematic, but I think overall that's the type thing that the governor is trying to do to encourage sustainability. However, the program goes on and establishes an advisory group, and it's the charge of that group to screen those projects and make recommendations to the governor, of which not all projects will get to the governor. When you begin to look at those, you'll have some of that criteria in there that I think the project, again, meets. That tends to be some of the boilerplate and more of the lofty goals of that. But then you get into some of the specifics of it, and this is where I think the project, as I mentioned before, is going to run into a situation without being defined that makes it less competitive and doubtful that it gets to the governor's attention. It does ask for a proposed budget for the project, including sufficient detail of projected expenses to enable the group to determine economic feasibility of the project. It asks for specific proposed sources of funding, including the ARRA funds, state or local government funds, private investment. It asks for projected specific jobs creation, including salary ranges for projected jobs. You need to distinguish between short and long-term jobs creation. It does the same thing for jobs retention. It asks, too, for projected economic benefits. I think when you get into those types of criteria, as I mentioned before, this project needs a lot of definition before the governor is going to want to put his name on it to make that competitive on a nationwide basis for these funds. So it doesn't mean that you can't be successful, but given the fact that Oregon City has a pretty good track record of taking pretty defined programs up there, you probably want to look long and hard whether you want to become a sponsor of this until this thing becomes more defined. But that's your call.
I would just
Thank you.
pose-
Questions? Commissioner Neely?
I would just pose one question. Would there be any benefit for us submitting this, realizing that it would be unlikely to come forward in terms of the information we can reply? Could it result in us getting feedback that would be beneficial for us looking at this particular project in more detail?
I don't see the benefit. I see some negatives in it. Again, we have been fairly competitive in what we've asked for. I think we've got a proven track record. We've definitely leaned on a lot of folks to get the dollars we've gotten. To go in with a project ill-defined, I don't think serves Oregon City very well, but again, that's your call.
Commissioner Nocita?
I have a question, Mr. Patterson, if you were able to learn anything about the deadline and how firm that is. Is it, as Ms. Holden suggested, that anything not submitted by the end of this month is just out of luck? And if that's the case, what's our alternative? Or is there one?
Yeah, I don't have a lot of information on that. I'm going on what Ms. Holden indicated, and she had indicated that at least first deadline. I think they may have another round of this. I think it may not come until next year sometime. I really would encourage her or whoever's going to put that together. I think they do need to invest some money in engineering and design of this project. And again, I don't think that goes across or crosses what they're trying to accomplish with green development. You're going to have to go through the same type of process, whether you're putting in green infrastructure or traditional infrastructure. Again, you have to have it defined. You've got to have some estimate of what that's going to cost, where those dollars are going to come from. There's just a lot of work that needs to be covered, and I think what we have right now is a good concept, but really it's going to take a lot of work to put it on the ground.
The piece that stuck out at me on the website, as well as in here's on the next to last page, which talks about to be considered by the advisory group. That would mean after Oregon Way blessed it, right? That would be the second step. So if the Oregon Way, or is that that's the advisory group?
Yeah, you
That's
have
the first step.
Yeah, the project
Okay.
goes to the
That-
advisory
okay.
group, and then they will screen projects and forward
Right.
those that they think are in the best shape onto the governor, and then from
Okay,
there.
well, I think
they-
this is the killer. The project must create new employment within the state within 60 to 90 days following the award of funds. That's
yeah, it kind of goes along the line
That's
what we've
pretty-
seen with all those dollars that they quote unquote need to be
expended
shovel
quickly.
ready, and there's very few projects that are.
Well, thank you for doing the research. I think that gives us some knowledge, certainly that we didn't have before, and I wish we could find a way to help move these projects along in our concept plan areas.
Well, I think the thing that we may want to do is sit down with Ms. Holden. I know she's kind of struggling in terms of what those steps are. We can't really engineer and design, but maybe we can give her some guidance on what it takes to bring these projects to fruition. I mean, this is not uncommon, what we've kind of been through with the rivers and the cove in terms of trying to get the details there to kind of figure out what we're dealing with, what the funding's going to have to be. There's just a lot of work from the concept to really getting it on the page. It still has to be done, and that's kind of basic 101 economic development stuff. So.
In order to
Okay,
get the
thank you.
stimulus money on the jug handle, we had to know exactly what we're going to do.
Yeah, and luckily,
Right.
we had that
Yeah.
project designed,
Yeah.
so we've been working on that we had that teed up.
Yeah,
Yep.
that we were really,
In fact, the Promenade and Warner Millie, we had those projects very well defined.
yeah, so, yes, thank you, staff.
Thank you.
Okay, moving then into the consent agenda, may I have a motion for adoption, please?
Move approval.
Second, but I have a correction for 7B. I'll second.
Let's see.
The
We don't
minutes.
discuss the consent agenda, so should we separate them?
Yeah, I didn't ask before. I caught a
Okay.
typo later. I'm sorry.
Which one is the one?
7B.
Okay. Then may I have a motion for the adoption of minutes of May 20th?
Move approval.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner West, seconded by Commissioner Smith. Nancy, the vote, please.
Commissioner Neely?
Aye.
Commissioner West?
Aye.
Commissioner Smith?
Aye.
Commissioner Nasita?
Aye.
Mayor Norris?
Aye, motion passes 5-0. Now, the June 3rd minutes.
7B on the minutes, if you look at ceremonies, proclamations, presentations under 3, the Hunsaker family is spelled wrong, and I think we need to correct. It's written Hunsaker, and so I would like that corrected to Hunsaker. I believe it's Hunsaker, but I'm not
correct.
sure.
Yes.
That's it.
I'll make
Okay,
that correction.
Would you like to make a motion for approval? For that correction?
Yeah. Move to approve the minutes of June 3rd, 2009.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Smith, seconded by Commissioner Neely. Nancy, the vote, please.
Commissioner Neely?
Aye.
Commissioner West?
Aye.
Commissioner Smith?
Aye.
Commissioner Nasita?
Aye.
Mayor Norris?
Aye, motion passes 5-0. That concludes our general business agenda. Now I'm moving into communications first. Mr. Patterson.
Madam Mayor, members of the Commission, I have 3 things this evening. The first is an item that eventually will take urban renewal approval, but really no need for us to move on that agenda unless the City Commission is interested in moving forward. And I'm going to let Ms. Krushauer explain these new bombing maps she has for you.
Gosh.
Thank you. Mayor and City Commissioners, we've been getting into more detailed design for the jug handle project that you were just referring to. And we have quantified approximately how much impact we have on the floodplain with the new roadway design and the bridge embankments. And we will need to do some floodplain mitigation. We identified, and as you know, our floodplain code requires us to find balance, cut, and fill within the same drainage basin. And we've identified parcels that the Urban Renewal Commission owns, and of course, ultimately, when the Urban Renewal Plan is complete, it reverts to the city. But there are two parcels between I-205 and the Union Pacific Railroad. One is about 4.7 acres, and one is about 4.9 acres. And then there's the other parcel, which you're most familiar with, where Clackamas Landscape Supply is leasing property from us, which is adjacent to the old Southeast 82nd right-of-way, which still exists. To the best of our knowledge, it has not been vacated. And then it's also adjacent to the existing Metro detention pond, which is partially in the right-of-way. And we had a couple of ideas, one of which you probably also realize that there are some wetlands in the two larger parcels. Well, actually, they're not the two smaller parcels between I-205 and the railroad. And we would not want to disturb any existing wetlands. We would potentially propose that if we use some of the land that does not have wetlands on it, that as we excavate to mitigate for the floodplain, we do some wetlands creation to enhance and enlarge the current wetlands. Then the other thought we had was on the property where Clackamas Landscape Supply leases, it might be a good idea from an aesthetic standpoint, from a natural resources standpoint as well, to enlarge the existing detention pond at the Metro Transfer Station. And we would be enlarging it into the old Southeast 82nd right-of-way and potentially encroaching a bit on that 6.8 acre parcel that the Urban Renewal Commission owns. This works well with the drainage patterns out there, and before we continue to conceptualize these ideas in a more detailed way, I thought I should probably get a heads up or a nod of the heads from the commission and then take it to the Urban Renewal Commission as well to see if that's something that would be acceptable use of those properties.
Commissioner Neely?
The wetland area between the railroad tracks and 205, back in the days when I did things at the Children's Museum that involved bringing native creatures in for the kids to look at.
It was your collection point?
Well, it isn't a collection point because I think there must be something that affects the water quality there. You can go in there when it's wet, you can turn over logs and so forth that have moisture underneath, you find nothing. And what I'm thinking is that possibly when this was under Stimson lumber, that maybe certain of the things that's in that area you're looking to use for wetland mitigation, there might be material there that actually seeps into that area and is somewhat toxic. Mm-hmm. And so I don't know what degree it would be possible to actually look at the water quality of the current wetland, to take a look at that, and to then incorporate into the plan. You're talking about expanding that wetland anyway, to look into the possibility of what we can do to enhance the water quality there that's already there, and it's something that you might want to look at.
Interesting. Commissioner Nocita?
I have a kind of a related comment. I think I mentioned this at an earlier commission meeting when we discussed the jug handle. I had made a comment about this area as a whole as formerly being what was known pre-settlement as, in early settlement times it was known as the Clackamas Bottomlands, and this whole area was one large, high-quality, high-functioning wetlands at the confluence of the Clackamas and Willamette rivers, and it's been impacted tremendously since then. I think, I could be wrong, but I think that that area between 205 and the railroad is the last remnant of that original wetland. So I would be very concerned and averse to doing anything as far as mitigation there that would do anything but enhance that. This drawing, I think that does concern me as having some kind of, heavy infrastructure type of area dug out of that area. I agree with Commissioner Neely on this. I think if we've been given this large grant, I think we should seek the opportunity to take every opportunity to do enhancement and kind of leave that as a, I think there are some trails down there. I've seen from 205 some picnic tables on the Washington side of the railroad tracks. But I would be concerned and averse to impacting that. I think what we should consider is some kind of interpretive signage, even, about the Clackamas Bottomlands, and that this is the remnant of that at this point. I would throw out another idea, because I've chatted with some folks about this. You're talking about balance, cut, and fill, correct? Because we will be doing some fill for the jug handle.
That's what we'd be mitigating.
Yeah. I would throw out the idea of approaching the Board of County Commissioners, maybe as Tri-Cities owns the old Rossman landfill next to Agnes, and seeing if we could mitigate by removing some of that.
The landfill?
Yep. Or, there's this other area, adjacent to 213 and Clackamas River Drive. That is, I think, fill, and it's also in the same basin as well. There are a lot of opportunities in this area to extract fill if we're going to use fill for the jug handle, and I think we can be maybe creative in finding that.
What was the other parcel you mentioned, the 213
Oh,
Clackamas
here.
River Drive?
This area.
That's Parker's landfill?
So he owns both on either side of the Home Depot is Parker land. Okay. But, again, Tri-Cities, since we're a Tri-Cities member, I think it would be fair game to,
I think Tri-City has a DEQ order that's dealing with their
Working on
site,
it.
so I could look into that, but
Yeah.
I don't think I'd want to get in the middle of their
Yeah.
plan.
We actually had talked a little bit about that, and I think they may be a bit reluctant because it means they'll go back quite a bit in the process, and that's going to slow down where they're at. So, but we can discuss it with them.
Commissioner Neely.
It sounded like Commissioner Nocita was looking at alternative sites, which I don't particularly have a problem with, but if the indication was not to consider the site between Railroad Avenue and 205, I would disagree. If I am correct in my belief that existing wetland, in fact, doesn't house much in the way of life, I think things could be done that potentially could make that a better place. There are cottonwoods growing around it and so forth, but I'm really talking about both vertebrate and invertebrate, or the lack of vertebrate and invertebrate life. I'm sure there is some, but it's not at all what I would have expected looking at wetland sites. And if, in fact, this gives us an opportunity to remove material that might be toxic, I think we should really do that. And I presume, I'm sure this is filled with all kinds of wood products and everything else, I would presume that we'd be removing this material and then finding more appropriate material fill to bring into the site where we're going to put the jug handle. This would probably be disposed of in some way if, in fact, it had toxic materials in it and so forth. Is that correct?
Oh, yeah. Right. In fact, whatever we do is going to be not only go through city review, but also, because we have federal dollars involved, there will be an extensive environmental review for all of the work.
Okay.
I think the idea, Commissioner Nocita, really would be to make that, if indeed it was the Clackamas Bottom land and it's the remnant wetland, it would be to make it larger and better than it is today.
Well, then I would support. I think maybe I was just concerned what I was interpreting from this sketch, which was maybe not meant to convey what I interpreted it as, because this drawing
I think it's probably a volume calculation.
kind of made me think of the made me think of that big thing at Thayer Road and Maple Lane.
Yeah. Commissioner Neely?
Yeah, I want to come back to the current leasee of that is a Clackamas Landscape and Supplies? Yeah. We're talking about using that area.
We probably wouldn't get all the way into the area that's leased. We'd probably, as shown in the drawing, it would extend
I
a
would
little
like
ways.
to give you a little bit of a history to them coming to this spot. They were leasing county property, and they were informed that that property was going to be used for some other purpose, and so they sought this area. It turns out the county never used the property they came out of. And so they made a major shift based on the ending of a lease that they had with one county jurisdiction that never did anything for the land in question, to come to that particular spot. And I would really try to negotiate with them to minimize their economic impact on this particular place. Some people regard it as unsightly, but by golly, they provide a service that's close by us that you really don't see anyplace else. And I've used them on several occasions.
Me too.
And I really would like to have something that they don't really feel hurt by. And that's just a comment.
Thank you. So any objections to moving forward with this? Okay, thank you, Nancy.
Thank you.
Two other quick items. You have a letter of understanding between the City of Westland and City of Oregon City. I wanted to make you aware that I have signed that letter. Again, this is consistent with our budget and what we've talked about before. As you know, the Pioneer Community Center does provide nutritional and transportation programs. We've kind of chatted about those here recently in regards to that contract, and this is some of the revenue picture that comes in from Westland, in which for the nutritional program they give us $23,000, and for transportation they give us $15,800. Just want to make you aware of that. And then the final item is you do have the Commissioner's action tracking form there, and just kind of give you an idea of some of the things on that and their progress. The D stands for done, the I stands for in progress, and the N stands for not started. All those things are either underway or complete at this point, and looks like we're adding at least 3 more things to that this evening, pending what comes up in the next section of the agenda. And Madam Mayor, that concludes my report.
Just need to elect less creative people, that's all. Commissioner Nocita.
I'd like to ask Mr. Patterson, Commissioner Smith and I have discussed this. We've noticed work being commenced on the Clean Clinic with vans outside and people going in inside it. I would request some clarification, because my recollection from the urban renewal discussion we had on the City Hall was that the Urban Renewal Commission was going to request a loan from the City Commission. And I'm curious as to why, and that wasn't even on our agenda tonight, so I'm a little bit in the dark as to why that work's proceeding when the City Commission has not approved that loan yet.
Correct. That is, Mr. Wimmer is working to get those papers put together so we can bring that to the City Commission. Again, that was one of the things when I asked the Urban Renewal Commission, and specifically directed that towards the City Commission, that you shouldn't approve that if you were not going to grant that loan. And I kind of looked at how everyone voted on that, and because the contract, again, has a time frame we need to get started on, because if that's delayed, then you have additional costs that goes with that. So that work has commenced. But if the City Commission is not in favor of doing that, I need to know that now, because we need to shut that down before we go any further.
I think it would be very helpful, and I've known about how we've done these loans before for other purposes, including we borrow money from Public Works. It has got all the funds that we can borrow. We do that actually on an annual basis to extend our period of time in our given budget year to meet the cash flow that comes in from taxes, which comes in November. So this is an ongoing thing. There are specific interest requirements, I believe, that we've got to make in terms of when we take these loans. But I think there would be some benefit to talk about the mechanism by which this is done.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd like to get the city attorney's opinion on this too, because it seems to me that we're expending funds that we haven't approved. If the city commission hasn't made that loan yet.
I'll give you the usual city attorney answer, it depends. I don't know enough about it to give you a full decision, but if there are adequate monies on hand to do the work that's been done, then I don't think you need to deal with that. But if you're not going to fund this, and we have obligations out there, now's the time to let it be known if you're not going to go ahead.
And you do have right now in urban renewal, you do have the money to do that project. Again, that will change if you enter into a development agreement with the Cove. And so again, you will get that. These are all kind of coming at you in the next couple of meetings, but you'll have to make some decisions there. So.
Okay. Thank you very much. Is that it?
That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Under my report, I would like to announce the appointment of Rachel Gordon to the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee, starting now and to the end of December 2011. Are there committee reports from commissioners? I have Commissioner Neely.
Yes, again, it's I think the only committee I'm really a member of as a non-alternate. The Urban and Rural Reserve Policy Advisory Committee to the County Board of Commissioners has met. Is meeting more frequently to get through the requirements we have. We've gotten through the Rural Reserve recommendations. We're now looking at the Urban Reserve recommendations, and these are recommendations in terms of them being candidate areas. We will have in fact urban reserve recommendations for consideration and rural reserve consideration that will overlap, and so that's part of the process. We've started the urban reserve process. They've been very interesting. One of them is an expansion out of the Sherwood Wilsonville area. The other one was an area that is French Prairie. In terms of our recommendation, only a portion of an area that was recommended for urban reserves was voted for by our group, and the Sherwood and Wilsonville area. And it was basically an area that urban services could be provided for, particularly sewer. The other areas south of that particular area, it would have been very difficult to provide urban services to. So we did not recommend to do the whole area as an urban reserve. The other one, and it followed staff recommendations really, was the area that we know I think is French Prairie, and it was rejected as an urban reserve candidate area to look at. The big pressure on that one was coming out of certain interest in terms of expanding industrial areas south of the Willamette River. There may have been four votes for a portion of that to be considered as an urban reserve, but there were, I believe, 11 or 12 votes opposed to that occurring. So my guess is that as the county looks at it, it'll be probably reticent to consider that area as an urban reserve. That crossing of the south of the Willamette River has always been a major issue. Back in Tom McCall's day, the poster child, I believe, was Charbonneau. And the fact that whole area, once you get down there, is just foundation farmland. I mean, the reason we've got the falls here, it acts as a barrier for sedimentation coming in, so you've got this tremendous deep soil that's wonderful for agriculture. That's south of the Willamette River at that point, and my guess is that won't come forward. I wanted to make a comment that I will be bringing a draft of what I hope will be a sense of commission statement in regards to urban reserve designation in the Beaver Creek area. I'm going to make a guess that the recommendation will be for that to be considered as an urban reserve, but and particularly given directives that were given, I think the day before, by the Board of County Commissioners, that we need to look at these conflicted areas that are adjacent to current urban areas in the metro area. You really need to look at them seriously as urban reserve areas for consideration. And of course, Beaver Creek meets that particular bill. But we've talked about a sense of place, our sense of place, and probably the Beaver Creek's sense of place. I'm going to try to draft a statement that I would hope would pass the commission as a sense of the commission in terms of if it becomes in fact a urban area, that particular community should be the driving force in terms of how that comes to be.
Thank you. Others? I think Commissioner Nocita.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't have a committee report, but I did want to report on an activity I took part in this weekend. I was invited to speak at the Veterans Powwow this weekend down at the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde. And I must say it was a really profound experience for me. Stayed overnight, spoke on Saturday, watched the color guard come in, and before I and others spoke, the veterans themselves took to the mic and recounted their experiences serving in World War II, Korea, Vietnam, up to the present day. And it was as I say, I mean, I realized when I was listening to these gentlemen speak that a lot of them were serving, impressed into the military at the time, especially during World War II, Korea, and Vietnam, when we still had a draft. And in the case of Korea and Vietnam, they were serving for us when we had terminated their status as a recognized Indian tribe. And to, in the face of that, see the patriotism was I mean, it was, like I said, it was quite profound. And I chatted about Oregon City and my status as a new commissioner, and learning a lot about our history here, not only our history since settlement, but the history of this area pre-European settlement, including when this area was known as the Pacific Northwest was the most linguistically diverse area on the planet. I talked about looking on maps and seeing the Clackamas villages up on the Clackamas River, and the various village sites around Willamette Falls and the confluence. And my hope that, as the tribe, which is, another kind of epiphany I had by being down there and seeing them, bring back their traditions like this powwow. They're building a plank house on the reservation site now, and kind of rebounding from that termination experience between 1954 and 1983. My hope is that we can, as they rebuild, be very supportive of that, even, because everybody here, when they were removed down to the Grand Ronde tribe, including the Clackamas. I started thinking about a number of specific measures we could take, and I'd like to propose one and make this a broader suggestion, part of a broader suggestion. I chatted with Dan Drentlaw about this, and from work I've done in cases, legal cases in other areas, I'm quite familiar with various consultation requirements, both at the federal level and in Coos County, for example, under their Goal 5 provisions of their comprehensive plan. They have specific consultation requirements in the comprehensive plan. And part of typically a Goal 5 inventory is supposed to include that kind of, research into archaeological sites, and Dan indicated that, we don't have that, and there is a cost to, these types of inventories. But simple things like, we have 7-member planning commissioners with only 5 occupied seats. I mean, I think all of Oregon City is traditional native land, and having a seat for a cultural department representative from the Grand Ronde, could be an idea. There are a whole bunch of ideas that could be explored. And since we're doing this code revision, we've just completed the big massive one, and I guess there's a supplemental one we're looking at towards January. I would like to propose to the commission of in work sessions, working with the community development director and department heads about how we can be sensitive in our planning decisions to that very significant cultural history here in Oregon City. There's other ideas I have for limited and targeted code revisions, because this is, again, a minor code revision process that we're aiming for January. But, just considering what we can do, I'd like to, advance that idea.
I think this is
Commissioner Neely?
I think this is a great idea. Yeah, the diversity was tremendous. I know a few years back when the platform was constructed there to Willamette Falls, it was actually constructed, I believe, by the Klickitat. Klickitat are actually, and so this is part of their
No. It's not Chinook. No, it wasn't Calipari. It's actually it's up where you work.
we won't say Yakima.
No,
Yakima,
it's above
that's
the
what I was
Yakima.
thinking.
No, the Yakima were there, because that's how we learned the spelling was Yakama. Yeah, it was the Yakima, that's right.
Okay, well, that was the reservation. The Klickitat, I think, were the tribe. The Klickitats are members of the Confederated
Right.
Tribes of the
Yakima.
bands of tribes of the Yakima
Yakima.
Nation.
Yeah.
I think they were people that
might be.
came into this
Might
area
be.
and were actually fishing the Falls. They're part of that reservation.
Right, yeah. No, I know.
But I've read accounts also that at the prime periods of fishing, that tribal members of the Nez Perce made it all the way here to fish. So this was a major fishing area, and I think it's well worth considering.
In our discussions with the Willamette Falls Heritage Area, we have the tribes of the Grand Ronde that participate, and it's very, very sensitive about who and which tribe receives recognition. And I'm going to talk to you also about another, for Oregon City's 150th, we put aside some funding for Leave a Legacy grants, and we, because we had not very creative proposals the night before. Well, at the beginning, at the time, my knowledge at the time were that we had none of us, I think, were very excited about the proposals that initially were proposed. So the night before, I put together a proposal, too, for a memorial. It's some leftover business. When, in 1850, 5 cayuse were hung in Oregon City, which is considered to be a very black chapter of history, because likely 3 of them were not guilty, and the history is extremely interesting between Oregon City and the Whitman Mission. The book Juggernaut is the book that we used during the Oregon Trail pageant days, and had the author Ron Lansing come and give us history talks locally, so many people in the community are aware of that. But in 1993, when we had the Oregon Trail commemoration, there was a promise made with the Cayuse, which are part of the Umatilla, Confederated Tribes of the Umatilla, that a memorial would happen in Oregon City around the hanging of the 5 men. And so I've been in touch with Armand Minthorn, who is on the tribal council there, and so I wrote the grant and got it. So we have a memorial started, and the promise was made by former Mayor Dan Fowler, so he'll be part of the committee. I will put together a bigger committee to do that, and the tribes likely will contribute an artist and possibly funding. So I think it could be a very exciting. It's not there's we haven't identified a location. I wanted to share this with you because as I said, I wrote it at the last minute. It's always bugged me that we didn't fulfill this promise that had been made in 1993. So I'd like to do that. And next year is the 150th date after this, after the hangings. And in Juggernaut, I encourage you to read it. It's a small little book, but it's absolutely fascinating. Ron Lansing, Professor Ron Lansing, teaches law and went through kind of a lot of the legal ramifications of how the trial happened in Oregon City, which was a huge event, as was the hangings. And then, so anyway, to kind of complete that loop, but I wanted to let you know, because if anyone has any either suggestions or concerns about it, I want to make sure that this is a process that's very inclusive and that we'll all feel good about at the end.
I would like to wholeheartedly commend you, Madam Mayor, for taking the initiative on that grant and receiving it.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I think I'm very excited about doing that.
Yeah.
Okay, I think another announcement that needs to be made. Citizens are beginning to be aware in Oregon City that the world's largest solar installation is going to be going in West Lynn.
The world's
And we
largest
have-
solar installation for highways.
Highways.
Not
For
the
highways,
right-
that's right, that's right. 'Cause the largest one I just read about, for highways, is going in, is being proposed. And so we have scheduled a town hall meeting on July 29th. It'll be here at City Hall, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. ODOT will be here to answer questions there. I believe our website has some Q&As. There's been a lot of neighborhood association action around that, so it's a really excellent opportunity for citizens to come and ask questions and hear the presentation, see the layout that's being proposed, and determine whether this is something that we can support. July 27th, 2 days prior, I believe that the proposal is before the Westland City Council for possible consideration for a vote. So we'll have an opportunity to see what happens there. And actually, is it possible, please say no, this isn't right, but there's two things that we haven't had an update on recently since John Lewis is here. One would be progress talks on the Arch Bridge. I mean, there's a lot happening behind the scenes, but we haven't had a public update. And then secondly, just a brief overview of we all pay $4.50 for pavement management, and we alluded to that earlier tonight, but how is that going? Where can we get the information, and how can we be informed about how our money is being used? Is there a possibility you can do that? And if you're not prepared, please say. We'll get that for you next time.
The mayor does not want us to leave here before 9 o'clock.
That's right. We have a bet.
I was thinking of leaving about 30 minutes ago, but then the discussion got so interesting about it. So the Arch Bridge, I'm definitely not prepared for. About all I know is what's in the paper.
Okay, good.
So I haven't been involved in that particular
Yeah, no, that's great.
project. Our pavement management program we did an annual report, which is published online, and that was the first year of the program. We didn't spend a lot of the money that we collected that first year, but we're hoping to make up for that this year. We've got a project that's out to bid that opens on the 28th of this month, which is all the street work that we'll be doing this year. We've also got a slurry seal contract that we have yet to solicit bids for, but we plan to. So we're working on the final pieces of that, and that needs to be really done by the end of this week. So we'll be moving forward with more. Our in-house crews have been doing a fair amount of what we call crack sealing, just getting into some of those streets that are a little younger age, maybe look a little less needy in terms of pavement maintenance, but they benefit greatly from this crack sealing. And, well, just our in-house paving crew is also, we did some work that you may have noticed along what I call Fireside Alley, which that's a little area up and down 15th Street. We've kind of been doing just real stopgap kind of stuff to keep the road together throughout the winter. So, yeah, I think there's a lot.
Great. Thank you. Appreciate the quick update, and I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but since you're here and working with that every day. Then I think we have a couple more announcements about Oregon City 150th activities need to be promoted here. Which one are you doing? Who's doing them?
Rocky's doing most.
You doing this one?
Yeah, okay.
Commissioner Smith, I know you've prepared your...
No, I haven't. But on top of that, I should say that I think 3 of us attended the CHP event yesterday, which was really great. The evening on the green last night, and I couldn't see that there was any heritage group missing, or I mean, it was really an amazing event, and I congratulate them for that. I think it was really good. Saturday the 25th at 1 o'clock at Chapin Park in Oregon City will be one of our kind of long-awaited events for Oregon 150, and that is the baseball game, which is going to be held along with a ice cream social afterwards. And so admission is free, and you can bring a picnic, or you can purchase a hot dog or ice cream there at the site. And there's going to be music and all kinds of excitement.
fun.
So 1 o'clock at Chapin Park on the 25th. We hope everyone will come out to that.
Okay, and then the final activity for Oregon City 150th celebration is the photo contest. So hopefully you're all taking fabulous pictures of things in Oregon City, because we now have substantial prizes to offer. And there will be a reception in Carnegie Center during the same time as the concert in the park. I think it's August 13th, Thursday, August 13th. And then part of the day on August 14th, you'll have an opportunity to come in and see those photos, the prize, all those who entered, I think, and the prize winners, and be able to vote on what's it called, the Citizens' Choice Award or something. So that should be fun. So get your cameras out, and the deadline is July 31st, I think. They need to come in here to City Hall. Commissioner Smith?
I just wanted to say, at the CHP event yesterday, the mayor pulled out her 150 things to do in Oregon City and was checking things off, and I just was horrified by it because I thought everyone had forgot that, and I had made a pledge to...
I forget a challenge? I don't think so.
I had made a challenge to this commission to see who could check off the most things on their list, and I have to say I've not been checking them off. I have been attending a lot of the things, so I'll have to look at it, but it's a reminder to the rest of the commissioners
been
that
checking
the
them
mayor
off.
is on it, and we better catch up.
Wait to see my tattoo.
I think I can safely say at this point that I'm going to lose.
Okay, Commissioner West. We'll save the best for last. Is that right? Last but not least?
Oh, well, I don't know about that. I'd like to fill you in a little bit on what's been happening with our Main Street program. I've been to 2 meetings on it. One is a committee meeting, not the board meeting. We have 4 committees on our Main Street program, and the one I'm on is the economic restructuring. So first of all, I'd like to say thanks to everyone who filled out the business and the shopper surveys that I've been asking everybody to do. We had, several hundred shoppers and 50 business, so it was a good sampling. We're really pleased. So our preliminary draft report is in from Market Tech, who is the market research consultant, and we're just making corrections on it, so it's not ready to present yet to the public or to even the commission. And I had asked Mary Bosch from Market Tech in a month when we finalize it and do all our revisions if she would come to commission and share that all with you. So we can look forward to that. Then...
Oh, the stinky shoe?
Yeah.
I've been curious about that.
I received another award. And at Main Street, we have a little fun. Lloyd Purdy, our executive director, has come up with all kinds of crazy ideas to reward volunteers and incentivize things. So I got the Golden Shoe Award, and along with Rob Crocker, because we have walked... How many consultants this spring? We've walked around Oregon City and downtown with the Lakota Group, with Dave Leland, with the University of Oregon students, with Market Tech, so we earned those from traipsing around. So,
Shall we put this on the wall?
yeah, I don't know. It's going to get recycled. Somebody else can earn it next time. Another progress is underway with negotiations with Farmers Market to perhaps maybe next year that they're going to consider a midweek market downtown. So that's pretty exciting for us, and that's a great place. Just start small, and we'll take it from there. And Linda Orzen has got our Art and Windows program going. Last Friday at the Liberty Concept, they had in Don Slack's building, 900 Main. They had a open house to see art. So that's kind of fun. And this is last but not least. Lloyd Purdy from our Main Street program has been diligent working with our downtown businesses to figure out how to mitigate the impacts of the bridge closure, or bridge restoration project. So he had presented 3 ideas of which the city, or which we could all negotiate around with ODOT for it, and that one was to improve signage off of 99 to direct cars into businesses, and another one was to improve the traffic flow and circulation downtown during the restoration project. And then that went into, well, if we're going to look at that, maybe we should look at it for more than the bridge closure and restoration. And we had a price tag. I guess Nancy Krushauer came up with a price tag and what it would cost for a preliminary study of $15,000. So that was one thing I really pushed for, because as we're doing the parking study, there's all these pieces that if we could line up and put together, we really might be able to make a difference down there. And the third thing that we talked about was streetscape improvement. But ODOT didn't jump up and down when we asked them for $1.63 million for sidewalks from 5th to 10th Street. So I guess that one, I'm thinking we didn't do so well, and we'll probably get some signage improvements. We'll probably get, not probably, I'm hoping we can get the study.
I hope we get on.
And the last concerns that these 3 methods didn't talk about were, and Mayor Norris has been talking about a lot, is how we are going to mitigate the pedestrian and bike access across the bridge during the closure. And once again, we talked about a van, actually a couple vans that would be going continuously. And they seem very receptive to that, and it sounds like they might even have some money in their budget for pedestrian and bike improvements. So that was hopeful. But next week, I think we'll have another meeting, and then we'll get to hear, after we've presented all this to ODOT, really where getting a little closer to what they'll do.
160, sorry. You don't
So, I
finish?
was going to say, Rocky was at this meeting. Do you have anything to add, or does Nancy Krushauer add to paint the picture correctly?
No, I don't think so.
I think, given Lloyd's contact with Matt Garrett, the Director of Transportation for the state, that's very helpful. And it may not be the full extent that we've actually proposed several different projects, and it could be that they focus more around the bridgehead. But regardless, I think that we've made some real good progress, and we really have to thank Lloyd for a lot of leadership
Yes,
on that.
Lloyd has done a great
Been-
job.
Been terrific. Mayor Galley, Chair Lynn Peterson from Clackamas County, and I will be taking a walk with Jason Tell, who's the regional director of ODOT, across the bridge in early August, which is basically a look-see of drilling down on needs. And then we had 160 bicyclists, kind of a precursor to Cycle Oregon, came through our town on Friday, and I spoke to them about the issues around the bridge because they were going across the Arch Bridge. And so we have a huge lobby with bicycle organizations throughout the region because the closest bicycle crossing, there was nothing from the Selwood Bridge down to Newburgh. So it's really a serious problem, and this is one of the favorite rides of many cyclists. So it's caused a bit. But I had an opportunity to lobby the head of the Oregon Transportation Commission, who was clad in Lycra along with everyone else, as well as several members of ODOT at that organization. So we're all working on so many levels. With Nancy, I believe that we're going to get some of that mitigation. This is kind of a new project for ODOT, I think, to be involved with the community in this particular way. So hang in there, everyone. William, come to the mic quickly.
Yes, quickly.
Excuse me, I'm William Gifford, citizen of Oregon City. And I want to make sure timely kudos are given to Public Works for the really fine job they did in repaving the parking lots, the 2 parking lots for the Pioneer Center. It really looks great, and the whole city should really appreciate that. Thanks very much for that.
Thank you for that. And on that good note, Commissioner Neely.
A question of you. I had heard that, and I'm not suggesting that they'd be reopened and used, but I had heard that there were originally restrooms on the Arch Bridge. Is anything going to be done to
No.
recognize
I asked
the
that
existence?
I'm not sure about recognition. We haven't been talked about
sorry.
that. They're not going to reopen them.
No, I wouldn't have thought so.
Right, because the utilities actually go right through it, but I don't know about historical recognition.
You want to recognize the
So this is getting into potty talk now.
I mean, it's a utility issue. I don't know why you're so reluctant to discuss it.
Let's put that under consideration for another meeting.
Yes.
No, but what I did want to mention was, on the urban and rural reserves, we're scheduling more meetings, and it looks like I'm going to continue missing study sessions. We had a couple of items that were pulled from the last one dealing with actual water conservation, which ones I brought up. I think the best way to deal with it is to proceed on that, and perhaps I can sit down with Nancy Krushauer at a later point and discuss the presentation that's made at that particular study session. I don't really want to hold it in advance until these meetings are over, because I frankly don't know when they're going to be over.
Right, they're going on.
And so I may be missing the next few study sessions.
So that's when the new meeting schedule is?
The second and fourth Tuesdays is the way it's been working out.
Okay.
And last times would have been ideal, simply because ours is the first Tuesday after our first city commission,
Right.
which turned out not to
different.
conflict.
I would prefer actually switching the day of the study session so Commissioner Neely can attend them.
Well, that's a possibility. That would be fine.
Yeah.
Maybe one of the other Tuesdays in the week.
Well, I think we decided earlier that it would be easier to do it on a Monday, but that's Planning Commission. So, yeah, Nancy's wrestled with that over the years.
Okay.
Okay. Unless we want to hold it elsewhere.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's certainly possible, but the web streaming can be done on a mobile basis, too.
Okay.
But it's a lot more work.
Yeah.
But it can be done.
Okay, and are you meetings at the same time, too? You meet at 7 as well?
Yes, 6:30 tonight.
6:30? Okay. All right, well, something to,
Which why I wasn't on the green on Tuesday.
yeah. Okay, scheduling issues for the future. So, thank you, everybody. We are adjourned.